Start. And I'm back, and I'm joined by Mr. Josh Caray. He is the voice of the Hudson Valley Renegades and a member of baseball broadcast royalty. And Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Gary. Thanks for having me.
And Josh, I know you're probably tired of answering this question, but your father was a legendary Braves announcer, Skip Caray, and your grandfather was an icon in the broadcasting world, Harry Caray. So you've grown up around the sport of baseball.
Correct. Grew up mostly around the Braves. I grew up in Atlanta, but certainly a big Cub fan as well. And, yeah, got to grow up around the game, and I was very fortunate to watch the Braves be so successful in the 90s, and it was a fun time.
Yeah, especially that time with Glavine and Smoltz and all those guys. And did you spend a lot of time with the ballpark and get to know any of those guys at all?
I got to know, I actually got to know Smoltzy and Glavine really well. And I think what I probably most remember is just their professionalism. I mean, these were guys who, and Maddox too, I didn't get to know Greg all too well, but really the entire organization from top to bottom really took a business-like approach. You didn't hear a lot of stuff about them in the media. I mean, it was just very much show up, play hard every day, go home, and come back ready to do it again tomorrow. And, you know, it was really a no-frills atmosphere. And you give them a lot of credit. It was a hallmark of consistency for a good 15 years.
Yeah, because your father was there at the that time, and also was in some of the bad years, in the early years.
Yeah, he was there from, well, 76 through 08. So, yeah, about the first half or so of his tenure, the team wasn't very good, not drawing very well, and if not for those successful teams in the 90s, I don't know if the Braves would still be in Atlanta. But, you know, fortunately, they turned things around. John Sherholtz and Bobby Cox did a great job of getting things on the right track, and even though this year's been a down year, they seem poised to be in the hunt for the next few years once the guys they have in their farm system make it up to the big league level. And you know, and again, you gotta have a little bit of luck, and certainly two big strokes of luck were Bobby Cox and John Sherholtz and the things they did. Really starting in the 80s when Bobby was the GM to build the farm system, and then what Sherholtz did in the 90s, actually putting everything together at the big league level.
Yeah, and of course, being bad all those years, they were able to get a lot of high draft picks, and really paid off for them eventually. But as you say, you have to have the farm system, and you have to have the good scouts there to make the right picks.
Yeah, I mean, you look at a lot of the guys. Obviously, you have you know, Chipper Jones, who was a #1 overall draft choice, but then there were other guys who who weren't highly regarded, who just continued to work their way through the system. Jeff Blauser, Mark Lemke, David Justice was a little more highly regarded, but Ryan Klesko, Javi Lopez, Ron Gant, these were all guys who, you know, Bobby brought in through the farm system when he was GM from 86 to 90, and then when John came on board, he really got the pieces together to make the Major League club better, getting Otis Nixon. Sid Bream comes to mind, Terry Pendleton, and really just guys like that, good character people who not only were great on the field, but great in the clubhouse, and really taught the young guys like, you know, Justice and Gant and people like that how to be professional ball players and contribute to the ball club.
Now, you were also the play-by-play guy for Stony Brook University, their football and men's basketball team, and quite a difference in sports. And I asked this of John Leahy last year of the Lowell Spinners, and now I'll ask you, doing all these different sports, which is the most difficult for you?
Wow. Believe it or not, I'd say right now it's baseball, just because I hadn't done it in so long. My last baseball game before this year was 2011, so it's taken some time to get back into the groove, and it's a different beast. It's pastoral, it's slower, there's no clock, and it really is a broadcast based more on storytelling and news gathering than some of the other sports like basketball, where basically you just throw the ball in the air and you go. So that one's probably been the most difficult, but I feel like with each passing week it's getting better, and all the things I was doing years before are starting to come back to me, so that's good.
That's exactly what he said. He does hockey in the off season, and he said that the baseball is more difficult because, just as you said, you have to do all the fill. You need the more stories to fill the time in between pitches and whatnot. And I think people don't realize, especially in the New York area here, that you guys are working a one-man booth essentially. You don't have a color announcer with you, so you have to fill in everything.
That, and it's a little harder doing it at the level we do, just because these guys are brand spanking new, the players I'm talking about. They don't have, there's not as much stuff out there about them. There's a little more stuff about the college kids, but the guys who are coming straight out of high school or from Latin America, there's not a whole lot of info to go on to really elaborate on their qualities or where they come from or what they did growing up and things of that nature. So it's pretty difficult, and you learn to be patient and kind with yourself when things start to drag. But, you also try to compensate with that by looking at what's going around Major League Baseball and maybe implementing that into the broadcast, especially if it's a one-sided ball game and you can be a one-man talk show more so than a play-by-play broadcast. So it's interesting. It's tougher on some levels, but you also learn to work around that, and I think in a lot of ways it makes you a better broadcaster.
And of course, you mentioned that you worked in baseball before. You called some of the minor league games for the Braves, and I believe you also did some work in the Atlantic League. And then, of course, you went to Texas and you did some sports anchoring, and it became a news anchor. How was that experience for you?
I was never a sports anchor down there, but you're right, I was a news anchor. And candidly, it was not a pleasant experience. I had worked in Atlanta before then, doing major market news as a reporter, both radio and TV. And I wanted to get into the anchor's chair and see what that was like, so I had to take several steps back and go to Victoria, which is a small Texas city, about 2 hours south of Houston, and candidly, it wasn't for me. And it was, I won't get into specifics, but it was really a rough situation down there. And when this job with Stony Brook was offered to me, I hate to say it, but it was really an easy choice. So I was happy to move on and get back to something that I really enjoyed doing, and I'm blessed for it.
You just wanted to get back in that booth.
Yeah. No matter what they tell you, if you're never going to be a great athlete, and certainly I wasn't, you'd like to be a part of a team in some sort of manner. And just being around the guys, no matter what sport, being around the guys, being on the buses, getting to know people, getting to know the coaches, their families, all that. It's not just about the games, it's just about being a part of something big and being a part of something special. And I've been very fortunate to do that, especially at Stony Brook, and we'll see where it leads. The school is growing, the athletics department is growing, and we'll just see where it goes from here.
And, of course, you're also handling the media relations for the Renegades, as well as your play-by-play duties. And how much of an extra burden is that on you?
It's not too bad. It's a lot easier here than it was when I was in the Atlantic League. Atlantic League, there was you're doing more games, but also there's just a lot of there's a lot more, believe it or not, that's required there because more scouts go to those games, and depending on where you go, you're in bigger media markets as well, so there's sometimes more requests to talk to guys and things like that. Here, it's been very laid back. Joe Asania, who is our baseball ops guy, former New York Yankee, he's been great. He's really helped me a lot. Say the first 2 weeks were a bit of an adjustment, but once I got the hang of it and realized how to manage my time and things like that, it's really been a cinch. So I've really been lucky to land with the Renegades.
And let's talk about the Renegades now. You'll be coming to Brooklyn to play the Cyclones this weekend, and should be a good series. They're tied for second with the Cyclones in second for the McNamara division. And you guys are just coming off a sweep of the Yankees. That's a big sweep because the Yankees are a very hot team and a very good team.
Yeah, and frankly, it was a bit of a surprise. We haven't been playing very well, quite candidly. It was our first series win since, I believe, State College, which was the second series of the season. So getting those 3 games and winning in some pretty impressive fashions, especially with our pitching, has been outstanding. I think I want to say we held them to 2 runs over the final, I want to say 20, 22 innings of that series. So our guys are playing hot right now, and you knew it would happen at some point because there's too much talent. But it just took a while, and we were just wondering when it would happen, and we're glad they're starting to come around, and hopefully it continues this weekend.
And speaking of talent, you have a number of draft picks that were just drafted in the 2016 draft that are playing for the Renegades, and your second-round pick, the Tampa second-round pick, is on your team, Ryan Bolton. Could you tell us a little bit about him?
Well, Ryan is out of the University of Nebraska. Great. Really, I like to think of him as a gap-to-gap type of guy. Great speed. If you get him on the base paths, he's going to try to run. Because of his speed, it makes him for a pretty proficient outfielder, can run to several spots and get there in plenty of time. Right now, though, he's just got to work on his consistency. Needless to say, the batting average is not where I'm sure he wants it to be. But sometimes I think we forget that these guys a month ago were playing college baseball, and between getting signed and moving up and finding a place to live and all that stuff, it's a bit of a whirlwind. So hopefully he'll be able to bring it around. But he definitely has the chops, and it's just a matter of him, like a lot of the other guys, becoming more consistent.
And it's an interesting. There's an interesting situation here. Your first baseman, Nathaniel Lowe. His brother, he was drafted the 13th round, and his brother was actually the number 1 pick. And he had a pretty good evening last night, I believe Nathaniel Lowe did. So how has he been performing?
It's really similar to a lot of the other college guys. Off to a slow start, been very good defensively, I think. But still trying to get adjusted to a higher level of pitching. And again, you're right. He had a pretty good game. I think a couple of games ago against the Yankees, picked up 2 or 3 hits, and he's another one of those guys who's starting to, I think, figure it out a little bit and seeing new pitching and being in a new environment and playing every day. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing to mention. These college guys, they play Friday through Sunday, then maybe 1 midweek game during college. Now they're playing 6, 7 games a week, and so getting the hang of that and getting ready to play every day, he's just another guy who's starting to come around, and I think as the next couple of weeks pass, hopefully it'll, the hot hitting that he's displayed in recent days will continue.
Now, tomorrow night we're going to see Brock Burke. I believe he's the scheduled starter for the Renegades. What can you tell us about Brock?
Brock, left-handed pitcher out of Evergreen, Colorado, 3rd-round choice in 2014. Unlike the college guys, he's been in the Rays system for a couple of years, struggled his first year. And then second year, it started to come around, and it started to click. He got off to a bit of a rough start this season, but pitched very well in his last game against Tri-City, even though he didn't win. Good fastball. Starting to work on his breaking stuff a little more, and that's one of the big things he told me is, you know, you grow up in Colorado, the talent isn't exactly world class when it comes to high school baseball. If you have one good pitch, especially a fastball, you can get away with it. Now he's learning that, you know, you can have your fastball, but you got to mix in some off-speed stuff as well to keep hitters off balance. And that stuff is starting to come together for him. And he's just another guy who, if he continues doing what he's doing, he'll find himself at a full season affiliate next year.
And who is some of the players now that who's hot and who's not?
I would say Jim Haley is really playing well. Guy out of Penn State came here, got off to a really good start actually. Been slumped for about a week, but now he's starting to come back around. I think he's up around the 300 mark. I want to say he was 6 for his last 11 or so, entering play yesterday. Also playing real well is Bill Pujols, our shortstop. Funny enough, he was only hitting 107 entering play on Tuesday, and he wound up hitting our first home run of the season. So go figure. He wound up going 3 for 3 in that game, had a couple of hits in yesterday's win. So he's starting to play real well. Some of the guys struggling right now, Garrett Whitley, who was the number 13 overall pick in 2015. You know, young kid, 19 years old, still trying to figure out pro ball. Was signed out of Niskayuna, right outside Albany. So he's certainly seeing a much higher level of talent here, and you know, just trying to work on putting the ball in play more consistently. He's got a lot of speed to burn, and if he can just put it in more frequently, he'll be all right. I'd say another guy who's struggling is Garrett Fultonchek, our second-round pick. He was actually drafted by the Braves, got traded to Tampa last year for some draft picks. Has the stuff, has the goods. It's just a matter of now finding the strike zone. And he's one of those guys who has a lot of ability, but he's just got to learn to put it all together and be more consistent. So those are probably the hot and cold guys we got right now.
Okay, and I know mentioned Brock Burke pitching tomorrow night. Do you know the rest of the pitching rotation at all?
Let's see. We will have, that's the third guy. So we'll have Jose Alonso on Saturday, and it would be Spencer Moran on Sunday.
All right. And you mentioned before about how the players are getting out of college and coming into the pros for the first time and going through this grind. And how has it been on you getting into this groove, as you said, getting back into the baseball groove, getting on the buses and making those trips? How has that been so far for you?
Oh, it's actually been just fine for me. I'm only doing home games plus our games at Staten Island. That's all our radio station and us are doing. So hasn't been that bad on me. I will say the first couple of series I got a sore throat because I'm just not used to talking that long.
Right.
But I got used to that and worked out a bit of a cold over the last homestand, and really towards the end of this last 9-game stretch or so, it really all came together for me. So I'm feeling good. I'm happy, and I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I love the organization, and hopefully our guys can continue to play well and see if we can make some more ground up in the McNamara.
Well, it's a fine organization, and you do a terrific job. I've listened to a couple of the games on TuneIn and really enjoyed your calls, and I'd like to thank you for coming on tonight, and good luck to the Renegades this weekend, but not too much luck.
Sounds good, Gary. I appreciate you having me.
All right, and we'll see you up at Hudson Valley next week, I think it is, sometime, right? The Cyclones go up
next
there
Sunday through Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah.
All right, so we get a chance to listen to you on the radio. If everybody out there wants to hear Josh Caray, you can listen to him on TuneIn next Sunday when the Cyclones go up to Hudson Valley. Josh, thanks again for coming on, And
All right.
take care. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Gary.
All right, Josh. Thanks so much. I appreciate the time.